through school, I think it's easy to pick up the idea that English, or any other language, has some perfect standard somewhere. As though at one point in time, a group of people sat down together, wrote out this perfect, unadulterated thing. And ever since that day, pesky kids have been ruining it and making it worse with their bad grammar. The reality couldn't be farther from the truth. Languages are fluid, they change constantly, and sometimes they pick up bits and pieces in their formalized structure that are far from rational. Things can come about by misunderstandings. I come to you today with 3 examples of misunderstandings or strangeness in the English language. Thing number 1, the ampersand. For those of you unfamiliar with the word, an ampersand is a squiggly little symbol used to represent the word and. Now, to understand where it got its name, we have to go back in time to the early 1800s. At this time in English, individual letters that could be their own word were often referred to as per se, and then that letter. So the letter I, which can be the word I, like me, could be referred to as per se I. Similarly, we had this symbol for the word and that could be its own word. It was referred to as per se and. Also, at this point in history, it was common for the symbol to be placed at the end of the alphabet for school children to recite. So they would go through the alphabet like we would now, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, yeah. But when they got to the end, they would say X, Y, Z, and per se, and. Now, side note, when I was a kid and I would recite the Pledge of Allegiance in school, whenever I got to the line, and to the Republic for which it stands, I always wondered what which it stands were. To the Republic for which it stands. I was unable to parse the sentence for which it stands and instead heard some nonsense word, which it. Similarly, school children reciting the alphabet would say X, Y, Z, and per se and every day without really knowing what it meant. Eventually, and per se and got mushed over time to and per se and eventually ampersand. So yeah, the ampersand is just a mashed up misunderstanding. Fun fact, this phenomenon of misunderstanding something or mishearing something, similar to people hearing something like the phrase, it's a dog-eat-dog world, hearing it as, it's a dog-eat-dog world, is known as a mondegreen. But that's a story for another time. Thing number 2, islands and isles. English is full of funky spellings. Most of these are due to the fact that language changes. At one point in our time, spelling largely matched the way we spoke. For example, all of those silent GHs in English, like in ate and through, used to make a sound. English speakers eventually stopped making the sound, and then we just never updated our spelling. So some weird spellings make sense. Even if they're obnoxious, they had a point to them. Some spellings are just dumb. Take the word island. What's that silent S doing there? It's not Island or Iceland. If we turn back the clock around 500 years, we would have seen that the word was spelled I-L-A-N-D and sounded almost exactly like it does today, island. And that's a perfectly sensible word. The land part means land, islands are made out of land after all, and the I part ultimately comes from the same word that gives us aqua, which means water. So land surrounded by water. Awesome. The problem is that at many points in the history of English, pretentious grammarians and stuffy professor types felt it was necessary to make English more like Latin and French, languages that they thought to be good, proper languages. So they noticed that the French word for island, île, had a silent S. Side note, we eventually just took that word into English, which gave us our word Isle, as in the British Isles. So they figured that the words must be related, that they aren't, and decided to make our English word island more proper. I'm doing hard air quotes right now. The English word should have a silent S too, they figured, so they added one, and we're still stuck with it. The funny thing is, the French actually ditched it in the 1990s when they have a spelling reform, so the French word for island no longer has a silent S, but we do. Great, thanks, I love it. Thing number 3, ye old. Now, if you've ever been to a Renaissance fair or watched a cheesy movie set in the Middle Ages, you've undoubtedly seen signs for ye old blacksmith or ye old pub, which might make you wonder, what does ye mean? Who knows? It's just some old-timey thing that old-timey people said in ye olden times, right? Well, no, not really. You see, English used to have a couple of letters that we've since lost. They were eth and thorn. Eth looks like a swoopy D with a line through the top. Kind of like how you cross a T, imagine you cross the D. And eth made a TH sound, like th. Thorn looks like a P, but you kind of have to move the hump of the P down into the middle. It too made the TH th sound. Now, for reasons I've been unable to track down, in the early 1500s, one common way of writing thorn made it look very much like a Y. And at the time, people could easily distinguish Y from thorn because, thorn was in their language. But over the years, people have become unfamiliar with thorn. Looking back at these writings, they've mistaken thorn for a Y. And they start to see these ye's all over. But with thorn, it would just make a TH sound. So TH and E. The. It was the, like the blacksmith and the apothecary. Nobody in the history of English genuinely went around saying ye. They just said the, like we do today. Except now, ye has just become some efficient shorthand for something that feels like old-timey or Renaissance-y. And so you see and hear it all the time. So, there you have it. The English language. Not some immaculate, pure creation that you ruin all the time with your poor English, but something messy, interesting, and ever-changing. So go ahead and have fun with the English language. It's pretty great. And have a great day.